The coffee maker in the precinct break room had been broken for 3 weeks, and that Tuesday morning I was determined to fix it through sheer force of will. I stood there in my wrinkled dress shirt. Sandra had been too tired to iron it the night before, shaking the ancient machine like it had personally offended me. The thing groaned, sputtered, and produced a thin stream of brown liquid that looked more like motor oil than coffee. You know, Ray, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, Tommy said from behind me, his voice carrying that particular morning raspiness that came from too many cigarettes he swore he'd quit. Then this whole job is insane, I replied, giving the machine one more shake. Because every day I come in here expecting criminals to suddenly develop a conscience, and every day I'm disappointed. Tommy laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. Speaking of disappointments, that lasagna your wife made last night? I'm pretty sure it violated several international treaties. I've been popping antacids like candy since I left your place. Sandra tries, I said, finally admitting defeat with the coffee maker and settling for the sludge it had produced. She really does. But somewhere between the recipe and the execution, things go sideways. Last week she tried to make Thai food. I'm still not sure what it was supposed to be, but it definitely wasn't pad Thai. Maybe you should do the cooking, Tommy suggested, unwrapping his fourth antacid. I do usually, but she's been taking these online cooking classes, trying to expand her repertoire for when we have kids. I took a sip of the coffee and immediately regretted it. She wants to be one of those moms who makes everything from scratch. Kids, huh? You two still planning on that? After our anniversary trip, figure we'll spend a week in Hawaii, come back and start trying. Sandra's already picked out names. Michael for a boy, after my dad. Elena for a girl, after her grandmother. Tommy made a face. Kids, mortgage, minivan? You're living the dream, partner. Says the guy who spent last weekend binge-watching crime documentaries with his cat. Mr. Whiskers doesn't judge my life choices, Tommy said defensively. Unlike my ex-wife, and her lawyer, and the judge who gave her everything, including my dignity. We made our way back to our desks in the detective division, a cramped space that smelled like old coffee, cheaper cologne, and the persistent mildew that plagued the building's ancient ventilation system. The morning sun slanted through grimy windows, highlighting the dust motes that danced in the air like tiny conspirators. My desk was its usual organized chaos, case files stacked in order of priority, yellow legal pads filled with notes in my cramped handwriting, photos of Sandra tucked into the corner of my computer monitor. The newest one was from her company picnic last month. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, dark hair catching the sunlight. I'd taken it right before she'd thrown a water balloon at me in retaliation for some joke I'd made. Tommy's desk, by contrast, looked like a crime scene. Papers scattered everywhere, empty coffee cups growing things that might qualify for their own ecosystem, and somewhere under it all, presumably, actual police work. How do you find anything in that mess? I asked, not for the first time. System, Tommy said, tapping his temple. It's all up here. Unlike some people, I don't need everything color-coded and labeled. Those labels saved our asses on the Morrison case. Your labels, my instincts, together, we're like a really dysfunctional superhero team. My desk phone rang before I could respond. The caller ID showed Sandra's cell, and I felt that little lift I always got when she called. 10 years married, and she still made my day better just by existing. Martinez, I answered, playing it professional. Oh, so formal. Sandra's voice was warm with amusement. Is this Detective Martinez? Because I'd like to report a crime. What's the nature of the crime, ma'am? Someone forgot to take out the garbage last night, and now my garage smells like something died in there. I suspect it might have been my faith in my husband's ability to remember simple tasks. Harsh, but fair, I admitted. spinning in my chair to face away from Tommy's exaggerated eye rolling. In my defense, you distracted me with those reality TV shows. I distracted you. You're the one who kept asking questions about the plot. Why is she mad at her? What happened at the charity gala? You were more invested than I was. Lies and slander. I was merely being a supportive husband, showing interest in your interests. Uh-huh. Is that what you're going to tell our future children? That daddy secretly loves trash TV? Our future children will know their father as a man of sophistication and culture. Sandra's laugh was like music. Right. The man who can quote every line from Die Hard is going to lecture about sophistication. Die Hard is a Christmas classic, and I will die on that hill. You're ridiculous, but you're my ridiculous. Don't forget dinner tonight, 7 o'clock at that new Italian place downtown. My sister and Brad will be there. I groaned. Brad's coming? Do I have to pretend to care about his golf game again? Yes, and you have to be nice. No jokes about how golf is just an excuse for middle-aged men today drink. But it is. Ray. Fine, I'll be good. I'll even pretend to be impressed by his score. That's all I ask. Oh, and this weekend we really need to finalize those Hawaii plans. Can you believe it's almost 10 years? Best decision I ever made, I said, meaning it completely. Smooth talker, save some of that charm for tonight when Brad starts talking about his new putter. I make no promises. I love you, you know that? I love you too, even though you can't cook. Hey, I'm getting better. That lasagna last night was almost edible. Tell that to Tommy. He's been medicating all morning. Poor Tommy. Maybe I should stick to salads when he comes over. Probably safer for everyone involved. After we hung up, I found Tommy staring at me with undisguised disgust. You two make me physically ill, he said. All that happiness and functional communication. What happened to the good old days when married cops were bitter and drank their feelings? Sorry to disappoint. How's the dating app situation going? Tommy's face darkened. Don't get me started. Last night's date took one look at me and suddenly remembered she had a family emergency. Her Uber was already waiting. I'm pretty sure she called it from the bathroom before she even came to the table. Ouch. Yeah. At this point, I'm considering just getting more cats and embracing my destiny as a crazy cat man. Mr. Whiskers could use a friend. See? You get it. Tommy pulled out a case file. Ready to do some actual police work? Got a lead on that pharmacy robbery from last week. Witness thinks they saw our guy at a motel on Crenshaw. We spent the morning running down leads, interviewing witnesses, doing the unglamorous work that makes up 90% of detective work. The pharmacy case was straightforward. A junkie named Dale Hoffman who'd gotten desperate enough to rob his dealer's grandmother's pharmacy. We found him exactly where the witness said, still high and counting pills like they were treasure. Man, you guys are fast, Hoffman said as we cuffed him, pupils dilated to dinner plates. I just robbed that place yesterday. Try last week, Tommy said. Time flies when you're high as a kite. Last week? No way. That's not right. It was sad more than anything. Another life destroyed by drugs, another family torn apart. Hoffman's grandmother cried when we brought him in. Kept saying he'd been such a good boy before the pills got him. After lunch, sandwiches from the deli across the street that had definitely seen better days, I found myself stuck with monthly report duty. Every detective had to compile arrest statistics, evidence logs, case clearances, mind-numbing administrative work that made me long for the adrenaline of a foot chase. That's when I found the first discrepancy. I was reviewing arrest reports from the past month, cross-referencing with evidence logs to make sure everything matched up for the brass. Standard procedure, boring as hell. The kind of thing you do on autopilot while thinking about what to have for dinner or whether the Lakers had a shot at the playoffs. The arrest report for Miguel Restrepo caught my eye. Not because of anything special about the case. Mid-level dealer, caught with weight, looking at serious time. What caught my attention was the math. Arrest report filed by officers Dale Brennan and Marcus Webb. 2 kilograms of cocaine seized during traffic stop. Evidence log filed by evidence tech Sarah Martinez. No relation. 1.7 kilograms of cocaine logged into evidence. 300 grams. Gone. Vanished between the arrest and the evidence room. I double-checked the reports, thinking I'd misread. But no, the numbers were clear as day. 2 kilos became 1.7. Someone had made 300 grams of cocaine disappear. "Hey, Tommy," I called across our desks. "You remember the Restrepo bust from 3 weeks ago?" Tommy looked up from his crossword puzzle. He'd been stuck on 14, across for an hour. Inevitable betrayal, 8 letters. The one where the guy claimed the cops planted evidence? That's the one. You remember how much product was involved? I don't know. Couple kilos? Why? He set down his pen, giving me his full attention now. Just checking something. Probably a clerical error. Yeah, probably, Tommy agreed. But something in his voice was off. A tension that hadn't been there before. You know how evidence gets weighed at the scene versus at the lab? Different scales, different results. 300 grams different? Tommy shrugged, already turning back to his puzzle. Stranger things have happened. I wouldn't worry about it. But I did worry about it. Something about the discrepancy nagged at me like a toothache. 300 grams of cocaine had a street value of about $15,000. That wasn't a rounding error. That was a year's tuition at a state school, a down payment on a car, a nice chunk of change for anyone willing to risk their badge for it. I pulled up more arrest reports, focusing on drug busts from the past year. What I found made my stomach turn. The Villanueva bust from January. Arrest report showed 500 grams of heroin. Evidence log showed 425 grams. The Thompson twins from March reported 1 kilo of meth, logged 800 grams. Ricardo Suarez from May. 3 kilos of cocaine became 2.6 kilos. Maria Gonzalez from July. 750 grams of heroin became 600 grams. Always drug cases, always significant amounts missing. And always the same names on the arrest reports. Officers Dale Brennan and Marcus Webb, with their supervisor Sergeant Frank Russo signing off. I knew these guys by reputation. Brennan and Webb were cowboys, the kind of cops who like to play it fast and loose with procedure. Russo was old school, been on the force for 20 years, had a reputation for getting results. They worked the night shift in narcotics, racking up impressive arrest numbers that made them look like superstars on paper. Now I was beginning to understand how they got those numbers. I stayed late that night, long after Tommy had gone home to his cat and his loneliness. The precinct took on a different character after dark. Quieter, more shadows than light. The kind of atmosphere that made you think about all the secrets buried in filing cabinets and hard drives. Working late again, Detective Martinez? I nearly jumped out of my chair. Captain James Morrison stood in the doorway of the records room, his imposing frame blocking most of the light from the hallway. Morrison was a legend in the department. 35 years on the force, more commendations than anyone could count, and a reputation for integrity that was literally used in training videos. He'd also been my father's partner for 10 years before Dad made detective. Morrison had spoken at his funeral, had been the one to hand my mother the folded flag from his casket. He'd looked out for me since I joined the force. A mentor and father figure rolled into one. Just catching up on some paperwork, Captain, I said, casually closing the file I'd been reading. You know how it is. The job's never done. Morrison walked into the room, and I caught the scent of cigars clinging to his uniform. He was supposed to have quit when his first grandkid was born, but cops and their vices were hard to separate. Your father used to work late like this, Morrison said, settling his weight against a desk. Drove your mother crazy. She'd call the station asking if he was really working or if he'd run off with some badge bunny. Mom still complains about it, says I inherited his worst habits. You inherited his best qualities too, his sense of justice, his inability to let things go. Morrison's eyes were steady on mine, and there was something there I couldn't quite read. Sometimes that's a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse. I'm not sure I follow, Captain. He sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Ray, I've been doing this job since before you were born. I've seen good cops, bad cops, and everything in between. You know what I've learned? What's that? The department is like a living organism, complex, interconnected. Sometimes what looks like disease is actually the immune system at work. And sometimes... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. Captain, are you trying to tell me something? I'm trying to give you the benefit of my experience. He stood, straightening his uniform. Some stones are better left unturned, Ray. The world isn't as black and white as they taught us at the academy. There's a lot of gray, and that gray, that's where most of us live. My father didn't believe in gray areas. Your father was a good man, one of the best. But he's gone, Ray, and you're here. You've got a beautiful wife, a good career, your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw that away chasing shadows. What if they're not shadows? What if what? Morrison's voice hardened. What if you're right? What if there's some grand conspiracy? Then what? You think you're going to bring down the whole system single-handedly? You think the department is going to pin a medal on you for airing our dirty laundry? I think cops who steal evidence should be held accountable. Morrison studied me for a long moment. You're just like your father, stubborn, idealistic. It got him killed, you know. He died of cancer. He died of stress, of carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, of thinking he could fix everything. Morrison moved toward the door, then paused. Go home, Ray. Kiss your wife. Plan your anniversary trip. Be happy. That's what your father would want. Captain, that's an order, detective. Go home. He left me alone in the records room with my doubts and my evidence. I sat there for another hour, staring at the patterns I'd found, the missing drugs, the dirty cops. Morrison's warning echoed in my head. Was I really prepared to take on the system? Was I ready for the consequences? I thought about Sandra at home, probably watching her shows, waiting for me to come home so she could complain about my forgotten chores and kiss me goodnight. I thought about our planned trip to Hawaii, the kids we wanted to have, the life we were building together. Then I thought about Dale Hoffman's grandmother crying in the interview room. I thought about all the overdoses I'd worked, the families destroyed by drugs that should have been locked in evidence. I thought about my father's shield, displayed in a case in my mother's living room, and what it represented. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. Sandra was asleep on the couch, the TV playing some infomercial about a revolutionary new mop. She'd changed into one of my old academy t-shirts and flannel pants, her dark hair spread across the cushions like spilled ink. I stood there watching her sleep, memorizing the peaceful expression on her face. 10 years we'd been together, and she still took my breath away. I remembered our first date after that disaster of a speed dating event. She'd been 15 minutes late, windblown and flustered, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry, she'd said, sliding into the booth across from me at the diner we'd escaped to. My car wouldn't start, And then the cab got stuck in traffic. And I know you probably think I'm some kind of flake who can't even show up on time. I think you're perfect, I'd interrupted, surprising both of us. She'd smiled then, this slow, beautiful smile that lit up her whole face. Perfect is a pretty strong word for someone you just met. Give me time. I'll come up with stronger ones. We'd talked until dawn, about everything and nothing. She was finishing her master's in social work, wanted to help kids aging out of foster care. I told her about becoming a cop, about wanting to make a difference. We were both idealists then, believing we could change the world one person at a time. Now, 10 years later, she'd compromised her idealism for a steady paycheck at a corporate HR department, and I was about to risk everything we'd built together for the sake of justice she might not even understand. I carefully lifted her from the couch, carrying her to our bedroom. She stirred slightly, murmuring something unintelligible against my chest. Shh, I whispered. Go back to sleep. Ray? Her voice was thick with sleep. What time is it? Late. I'm sorry. Working on a case? Yeah, but it's done now. Go back to sleep. She snuggled deeper into the blankets as I set her down. Love you. Love you too. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, watching her breathe in the darkness. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I'd make my decision about what to do with what I'd found. Tonight, I just wanted to pretend everything was normal, that we were just another happy couple planning their future. But sleep didn't come easy. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the rotations of the ceiling fan, thinking about Morrison's warning and Tommy's strange reaction to my questions. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, I'd made my decision. The next morning was Saturday, but I told Sandra I had to go into the station to finish some paperwork. She grumbled about me working weekends, but kissed me goodbye anyway. Don't forget we're having lunch with my parents tomorrow, she reminded me. And please try to be on time. You know how my father gets when we're late. I'll be there, I promised. Another lie, though I didn't know it yet. I spent the morning at my home computer, compiling everything I'd found into a comprehensive report. Names, dates, amounts, patterns. I cross-referenced arrest records with court documents, finding more discrepancies. Several dealers had claimed at trial that larger amounts were seized than what was entered into evidence. Their claims had been dismissed as typical criminal lies, but now I wondered. I dug deeper, using public records and database access that probably stretched the boundaries of legal. What I found was a pattern that went back at least 2 years. Conservative estimate. Over 100 kilos of various drugs had disappeared between arrest and evidence logging. Street value in the millions. But it was the financial records that really painted the picture. Brennan had bought a boat 6 months ago, 40-foot cabin cruiser, paid in cash. Webb's wife had quit her job last year, yet they'd upgraded to a house in a gated community. Russo's kid went to private school at $30,000 a year, drove a BMW to campus. None of it fit with cop salaries, even with overtime. I made multiple copies of everything. Encrypted files on thumb drives, physical printouts, cloud storage under fake accounts. I hid copies everywhere I could think of. Safety deposit box Sandra didn't know about, my locker at the gym, even mailed one to myself at a P.O. box I'd rented that morning. Sunday's lunch with Sandra's parents was torture. I sat there listening to her father drone on about his golf game while my mind raced through possibilities. Who could I trust? How deep did this go? Was I putting Sandra in danger just by knowing what I knew? Ray seems distracted, Sandra's mother observed over dessert. Everything all right at work? Just a complicated case, I said, forcing a smile. You know how it is. Sometimes the job follows you home. That's why I told Sandra she should marry an accountant, her father said, not for the first time. Regular hours, good money, no one shooting at you? Dad, Sandra warned. What? I'm just saying police work is dangerous. And apparently not that lucrative, given that you're still driving that old Honda. The Honda runs fine, I said, the same response I always gave to his not-so-subtle digs about my career choice. I'm just worried about my daughter's future. When you have kids, when we have kids, they'll have two parents who love them and love each other, Sandra interrupted. That's more than a lot of people have, regardless of their parents' professions. She reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back, guilt twisting in my stomach. She was defending me, standing by me, and I was about to put her through hell. Monday morning, I made my decision. I couldn't go to anyone in my precinct. Morrison's warning had made it clear that the corruption might go higher than just 3 street cops. Instead, I drove to Internal Affairs. The IA office was located in a separate building downtown, and deliberate separation meant to ensure independence from the regular department. The waiting room looked like any generic government office. Uncomfortable chairs, outdated magazines, and an atmosphere of barely contained dread. Sergeant Mike Kowalski was new to IA, transferred in 6 months ago from the downtown precinct. His reputation preceded him. Straight arrow, by the book, the kind of cop who'd ticket his own mother for jaywalking. He looked the part, too. Tall, athletic build that spoke of regular gym time, prematurely silver hair at his temples that made him look distinguished rather than old, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything. Detective Martinez, he said, offering a firm handshake. What brings you to IA? His office was obsessively neat, files arranged with military precision, not a paper out of place. Even his coffee mug sat on a coaster aligned perfectly with the edge of his desk. I placed my file on his desk. Evidence of systematic corruption within the department, drug theft, evidence tampering, possible connections to organized crime. His expression didn't change as he flipped through the pages, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. These are serious allegations. Officers Brennan and Webb have excellent records. Sergeant Russo has been decorated multiple times. The evidence speaks for itself. Over 100 kilos of drugs missing from evidence over 2 years. Financial records showing unexplained wealth. The pattern is clear. Patterns can be misleading. He closed the file, his gray eyes studying me. But you're right. This warrants investigation. I'll need you to keep this completely confidential. If these officers are as dirty as you suggest, we don't want to spook them. Of course, I haven't spoken to anyone about this. Good, good. He stood, came around the desk. This took courage, Ray. I know how hard it is to report on fellow officers, the thin blue line and all that. The thin blue line is supposed to separate us from the criminals, not protect us when we become them. Exactly right. He put a hand on my shoulder. Your father would be proud. He had a reputation for integrity. You knew my father? By reputation only, but any cop worth his salt knows the Martinez name. He walked me to the door. I'll be in touch. In the meantime, act normal. Don't let on that anything's changed. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Good man. We'll get these bastards, Ray. I promise you that. I left feeling lighter than I had in days. Finally, someone in authority knew. Someone with the power to do something about it. I even whistled on the drive back to the precinct, some old song my father used to hum while he worked on his car. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of forced normalcy. I worked my cases with Tommy, had dinner with Sandra, finalized our Hawaii reservations. I bought new swim trunks that Sandra laughed at. You're not 25 anymore, babe, she said, holding up the board shorts I'd picked. Maybe something with a little more coverage? You know, something that won't scandalize the other tourists? Are you saying I'm getting fat? I'm saying you're getting distinguished. There's a difference. She kissed my cheek. Besides, I don't want all those beach bunnies checking out my husband. The only bunny I care about is you. Smooth talker. Save some of that charm for when we're lying on the beach, mai tais in hand. We were happy. God, we were so happy. Looking back now, those 2 weeks were the last normal moments of our marriage. I wasted them checking my phone constantly, waiting for updates from Kowalski that never came. Every time my phone rang, I expected it to be IA telling me arrests had been made. Instead, it was Sandra reminding me to pick up milk, or Tommy complaining about his latest dating disaster. I'm telling you, Ray, I'm cursed, Tommy said over beers that Tuesday. This one actually seemed normal. Showed up on time, looked like her pictures could hold a conversation. Then she asked if I'd ever killed anyone. That's not that weird. Lots of people are curious about cop stuff. I thought so too. So I told her about that shootout on 5th Street last year. You remember the bank robbery gone wrong? Yeah, I remember. I'd been there too. Had been the one to pull Tommy to cover when the shooting started. She got this look in her eyes, started asking for details. What did it feel like? Did I see the life leave his eyes? Did I keep my gun as a trophy? Tommy shuddered. I'm pretty sure she was getting turned on by it. Maybe she was just interested in your work. Ray, she asked if she could see my gun, and I'm pretty sure she didn't mean the one in my holster. I laughed despite myself. So what did you do? Excused myself to the bathroom and climbed out the window. I'm 42 years old and I climbed out a bathroom window like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. Smooth. Hey, better than sticking around to find out she's got a murder fetish. He took a long pull of his beer. I'm telling you, I'm done with dating apps. From now on, it's just me and Mr. Whiskers against the world. You could try meeting someone the old-fashioned way. You know, in person. Where? The grocery store? The gym? Hey, I noticed you're buying organic bananas. I'm also into potassium. Want to grab coffee? It worked for me and Sandra. You and Sandra met at a speed dating event. That's basically an analog dating app. True, but at least I could see she was real and relatively sane before committing to a full date. Relatively sane. The key to any successful marriage. Tommy raised his beer in a mock toast. To low standards and lower expectations. To finding someone who'll put up with your crap, I countered. I'll drink to that. Wednesday morning, everything changed. I was at my desk, working on paperwork for a domestic violence case, when my cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. Martinez? Ray, it's Tommy. Don't react, just listen. His voice was strained, barely above a whisper. Can you meet me at Murphy's in 20 minutes? Come alone. Just do it. Please. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, a cold weight settling in my stomach. Tommy was sitting 15 feet away at his own desk, apparently absorbed in his computer screen. When I stood to leave, he didn't look up. Gotta run an errand, I announced to no one in particular. Still no reaction from Tommy. Whatever was happening, he didn't want anyone to know we'd spoken. Murphy's was a cop bar 3 blocks from the station. The kind of place where the walls were covered in department memorabilia and the bartender knew everyone's poison. At 2 in the afternoon, it was nearly empty. Just a couple of retired guys nursing beers and war stories. Tommy was in a back booth, hunched over a whiskey that looked untouched. He looked up when I slid in across from him, and I'd never seen fear in his eyes before. Real fear, the kind that comes from knowing exactly how bad things can get. They know, he said without preamble. Who knows what? About your investigation, about the report you filed with IA. He leaned forward, voice dropping even lower. Ray, they're coming for you. Tonight. The words hit like ice water. How do you know this? Tommy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I'm one of them. Because I've been taking their money for 6 months. Because I'm a dirty cop and a terrible friend, and you need to run. The booth seemed to spin around me. You? Tommy, what are you talking about? 3 months after my divorce was finalized, Russo approached me, said they needed someone in the detective division who could steer investigations away from certain areas. Someone who could make evidence disappear when necessary. He finally took a sip of whiskey, his hand shaking slightly. Do you know what it's like living on half a cop's salary because your ex-wife's lawyer convinced a judge you were hiding assets? Eating ramen 5 nights a week? Choosing between gas and groceries? So you became a criminal? I became a survivor. He met my eyes then, and I saw shame there alongside the fear. I never touched drugs, never sold anything. I just looked the other way, misfiled some reports, made sure certain cases went cold. 50 grand a year for doing basically nothing. 50 grand. That's what your integrity was worth? Don't. His voice hardened. Don't sit there in your perfect marriage with your perfect life and judge me. Not everyone gets the fairy tale, Ray. Some of us are just trying to make it to tomorrow. I trusted you. I know, and I'm trying to save you now, so maybe that counts for something. He pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. There's 10 grand in there. Take Sandra and run. Tonight. Don't go home first, don't pack, just go. I'm not running. I didn't do anything wrong. You think that matters? Tommy leaned back, suddenly looking older than his years. Kowalski's been feeding them information from day one. Your report? Destroyed. Your meeting? Never happened. Meanwhile, they've been building a case against you. Fake bank accounts, doctored surveillance photos, witnesses who'll swear they bought drugs from you. What witnesses? Junkies looking at hard time who'll say anything for a reduced sentence. Dealers who'd rather flip on a cop than go to prison. They've had 6 months to set this up, Ray. Your investigation just moved up their timeline. 6 months? But I only went to IA 2 weeks ago. No, Kowalski's been laying groundwork since January, creating a paper trail that makes you look dirty. Small stuff at first. Discrepancies in your reports, questions about your case clearance rate, anonymous tips about you meeting with known dealers. Tommy signaled for another whiskey. When you walked into his office with evidence of their operation, you signed your own death warrant. We'll go to the FBI. You'll testify. With what evidence? You think your copies still exist? They've been in your house, Ray. Your car, your locker. Your computer's been wiped, your files destroyed. By tomorrow morning, you'll be just another dirty cop who got caught. Then why warn me? Why risk yourself? Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Because you're my partner. Because you're the only real friend I've ever had. Because maybe if I do this one thing right, it'll balance out some of the wrong. Tommy, they're planting 3 kilos in your garage tonight. Same weight that went missing from the Restrepo bust. They've got the evidence tags and everything. SWAT's going to hit your house around 11. And Ray? His voice dropped to barely a whisper. In prison? A cop who knows what you know? You won't last a week. I stared at the envelope full of cash. $10,000. Enough to run to start over somewhere. Maybe Tommy was right. Maybe the smart play was to disappear. What about Sandra? Take her with you. Tell her the truth. Don't tell her, I don't care. Just get her out before... He stopped, face going pale. Shit. Don't look. But Brennan just walked in. Officer Dale Brennan stood at the bar, uniform crisp despite the end of his shift. He ordered a beer, casual as could be, but his eyes swept the room like a predator scanning for prey. Go, Tommy whispered. Back exit. Now. What about you? I'll be fine. I'm still one of them, remember? He pushed the envelope closer. Take it and go. Please. I palmed the envelope and slid out of the booth, keeping my movements casual. The back exit led to an alley that smelled like piss and broken dreams. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, trying to process everything Tommy had told me. My partner was dirty. IA was compromised. Evidence was being planted in my home right now. In a few hours, I'd be just another corrupt cop caught in the act, my protests of innocence lost in the overwhelming weight of manufactured evidence. I could run. Take Sandra and disappear. Live the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, always wondering when the past would catch up. Or I could go home and face whatever was coming. I left the money in a dumpster and drove home. Sandra was in the kitchen when I arrived, dancing to some pop song on the radio while she attempted to cook dinner. The smell suggested another culinary disaster in progress, but I'd never been so happy to see her questionable cooking. Hey, handsome, she said, turning to kiss me. You're home early. Dinner won't be ready for another hour, assuming I don't burn it again. We need to talk. Something in my voice killed her smile. She turned off the music in the stove, giving me her full attention. What's wrong? I told her everything. The investigation, the missing drugs, the corrupt cops, Tommy's warning, the raid that was coming. She listened without interrupting, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, fear. So we run, she said when I finished. We pack what we can and I'm not running. Ray, I'm going to call the FBI, tell them everything, but you should go to your sister's tonight, just until, like hell. She crossed her arms, and I saw the steel that had made me fall in love with her. 10 years, Ray. 10 years we've been together. If you think I'm leaving you now... Sandra, this is dangerous. These people are about to learn what happens when they come after my family. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my cousin. You remember Marcus? The criminal defense attorney? He owes me about a dozen favors. Sandra, no, we're not doing this alone. We're going to call lawyers, call the media, call everyone we can think of. They want to frame you? Fine. But they're going to do it with the whole world watching. I pulled her into my arms, burying my face in her hair. I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But you're stuck with me anyway. She pulled back, eyes fierce. Now, what do we do first? We spent the next hour making calls. Sandra's cousin promised to be at the house within the hour with a team of lawyers. I called a reporter I knew from the Tribune, gave him the basics. He smelled a story and promised to have a camera crew ready. But we ran out of time. At 8:47 p.m., as Sandra was on the phone with another lawyer, and I was uploading files to a cloud server, the doorbell rang. We both froze, looking at each other. Too early for the lawyers. Too late for a social call. Maybe it's... Sandra started. The door exploded inward. What followed was a tsunami of noise and violence. SWAT officers flooded our home like water through a broken dam, voices shouting commands that blended into an incomprehensible roar. I saw Sandra's face transform from confusion to terror as they forced me to the ground, my cheek pressed against the hardwood floor I'd installed myself last summer. Ray Martinez, we have a warrant to search these premises. I tried to speak, to explain, but a knee in my back made breathing difficult, let alone talking. From my position on the floor, I could see Sandra pressed against the kitchen wall, a female officer blocking her path to me. Ray! Oh God, what's happening? There's been a mistake! It's okay, I managed to gasp. Don't resist. Just do what they say. The search was thorough and professional. They went through everything. every drawer, every closet, every box in storage. Our lives dissected and cataloged by strangers in tactical gear. I lay on my living room floor in handcuffs, watching boots march past at eye level, counting the minutes until they found what I knew was waiting. "Sir!" A voice from the garage. "We've got something!" My heart sank even as I'd expected it. Whatever they'd planted, they'd found it. They hauled me to my feet as the evidence tech came in carrying a black duffel bag. He unzipped it with gloved hands, revealing brick after brick of cocaine, each wrapped in plastic and marked with evidence tape that looked official enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. 3 kilos, the lead detective announced, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a job well done. Matches what went missing from the Restrepo bust. Even has the same lot numbers. "Those aren't mine," I said, knowing how it sounded. Every criminal said the same thing. "Check the tags. Check when they were logged. This is a setup." "Save it for booking," the detective said. He turned to Sandra. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come to the station for questioning." Sandra looked between me and the drugs, her face a study in disbelief. "Those aren't his. They can't be. Someone put them there. Ray's the one who was reporting corruption. He's the one trying to stop this." "Ma'am, no! This is wrong! You have to listen!" She tried to push past the officer to get to me. "Tell them, Ray! Tell them about the investigation!" "Get her out of here!" the lead detective ordered. They led Sandra away as they loaded me into a patrol car. The last image I had of my wife was her standing in our driveway, illuminated by flashing red and blue lights, screaming my name as a female officer guided her to a separate vehicle. Our neighbors had come out to watch. The Johnsons from next door, old Mrs. Chen from across the street, the teenage Parker kids recording everything on their phones. The ride to the station was surreal. I'd done this drive hundreds of times, but never from the back seat, never in handcuffs, never as the criminal instead of the cop. The detective driving didn't speak, didn't even look at me in the rearview mirror. I was already a ghost, a non-person, a cautionary tale other cops would tell. They booked me like any other criminal. The desk sergeant Patterson had been at my wedding. He'd done a terrible karaoke version of My Way at the reception, drunk on free champagne and goodwill. Now he wouldn't meet my eyes as he logged my belongings. "Wedding ring, wallet, watch, cell phone," he muttered, sealing everything in an evidence bag. "Patterson," I said. "You know me. You know this is wrong." He glanced up briefly, then away. "I don't know anything anymore, Martinez." The holding cell was a purgatory of beige walls and disinfectant smell. They put me in protective custody. Even corrupt cops got some protection from the general population. The cell was clean, private, and somehow lonelier than any place I'd ever been. I spent that first night counting ceiling tiles, 47 with 3 showing water damage and 1 with what looked like a boot print. How did a boot print get on a ceiling? The mysteries of jail architecture. I counted them over and over, a meditation against the reality of my situation. Dawn came without sleep, announced by the buzzing of fluorescent lights that never really turned off. Breakfast was a tray of something that might have been eggs, toast that could double as roofing material, and coffee that tasted like liquid depression. I forced myself to eat, knowing I needed strength for whatever came next. My lawyer arrived at 9 a.m. Janet Hoffman from the public defender's office looked exactly like what she was: overworked, underpaid, and carrying too many cases. She had that particular exhaustion that comes from fighting a system designed to grind people down, and she wore it like armor. "Mr. Martinez," she said, settling her files on the metal table between us. The interview room was small, windowless, with cameras in every corner. "I've reviewed the charges. 3 counts of possession with intent to distribute, evidence tampering, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, theft of police property, and abuse of official position. It's all fabricated. I was investigating. Stop. She held up a hand that had seen too many gestures of innocence. I need you to listen very carefully. They have 3 kilos of cocaine with evidence tags linking them directly to a bust you were involved in. They have financial records showing large cash deposits to accounts in your name over the past 6 months. They have 2 witnesses willing to testify they purchased drugs directly from you. What witnesses? What accounts? The witnesses' names are sealed for their protection. As for the accounts, they were opened online using your social security number and driver's license information. The deposits were all cash, made at various ATMs around the city. She flipped through pages like she was reading my obituary. There's also surveillance footage of you meeting with known drug dealers on multiple occasions. That's impossible. Any footage would be from investigations, official police work. The footage shows you alone, out of uniform, in areas known for drug activity. The timestamps correspond with your off-duty hours. She pulled out a grainy photo. This is you, isn't it? Outside the Riverside Motel, talking to Manuel Vega, a known dealer. I stared at the photo. It was me, but I'd never been to that motel. Never met Manuel Vega. The photo was fake, but it was a good fake. Good enough to convince a jury. This is all manufactured. I went to Internal Affairs 2 weeks ago with evidence of corruption. Sergeant Kowalski has no record of meeting with you. In fact, he says he's been investigating you for 6 months based on tips from confidential informants. She pulled out another document. This is his report, filed yesterday. It details surveillance, financial investigations, and witness statements, all pointing to your involvement in drug trafficking. The room spun. Everything Tommy had warned about was true. They'd been building this case for months, long before I'd stumbled onto their operation. I'd walked into IA thinking I was the hunter, not knowing I'd been prey all along. He's lying. He's part of it. They're all part of it. Do you have any proof? Any records of your meeting? Copies of what you gave him? I have copies hidden. I stopped. Thought about the places I'd hidden evidence. My garage where they'd searched. My gym locker, easy enough to break into. The safety deposit box would require a warrant, but if they'd been planning this for months. Mr. Martinez? I need to make some calls. But every copy was gone. The hiding spots were empty, the digital files erased, even the cloud storage accounts had been deleted. Whoever was behind this had been thorough. It was as if my investigation had never existed. The bail hearing was a joke. No judge was going to grant bail to a cop accused of drug trafficking. The prosecutor, a young ADA named Melissa Chen, who'd always been friendly at department Christmas parties, painted me as a master manipulator who'd used his badge to run drugs. Your Honor, Detective Martinez had access to evidence lockers, crime scenes, and confidential informant information. He used his position of trust to operate a drug distribution network while maintaining the facade of a dedicated officer. The people request remand. My lawyer's arguments fell flat against the weight of manufactured evidence. The judge, Harold Kramer, who I'd testified before dozens of times, looked at me like I was a stranger. Or worse, like I was exactly what they said I was, a corrupt cop who'd gotten caught. Bail is denied. The defendant will be remanded to custody pending trial. I heard Sandra make a sound behind me, something between a gasp and a sob. They gave us 3 minutes in a holding room before transfer. 3 minutes to say goodbye to the life we'd built. Sandra grabbed my hands through the cuffs, her fingers cold and trembling. I don't understand any of this. The lawyer says they found drugs in our home. Our home, Ray? How is that possible? They were planted. The cops I was investigating, Stop! She pulled back slightly, and I saw the first crack in her faith. Just stop. Do you know what you sound like? Every criminal claims they're innocent, that they were framed. The evidence. You know me. 10 years, Sandra. Have I ever lied to you? Ever given you a reason to doubt me? I thought I knew you. But then Sergeant Kowalski came to the house. Kowalski? When? Yesterday, after they took you. He seemed so concerned, so helpful. He said he's been trying to help you, trying to get you to come clean for months. He showed me things, Ray. Bank statements with deposits I never knew about. Photos of you meeting with known dealers. Whatever he showed you was fake. I'm telling you, he's... Time's up, the guard announced. Sandra stood slowly, like her bones hurt. I need time to think, to process all this. The house is a crime scene now, so I'm staying with my sister. I'll come see you when I can. Sandra, please, you have to believe me. She paused at the door, not looking back. I want to, Ray. God, I want to. But wanting something doesn't make it true. She left without another word, and I knew with a certainty that made my chest physically ache, that I was losing her. That Kowalski and the others weren't satisfied with just destroying my career and freedom. They wanted to take everything.